In Orthodox Christianity, there is an understanding that certain territories, countries, or peoples belong to the spiritual leadership of a particular bishop. The major rule of canonicity is that there could not be two bishops or two churches ministering the same territory. In the Russian Orthodox Church, under the headship of the Patriarch of Moscow, this has lately been especially politically significant. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, 15 former Soviet republics became independent states. Some of them had been independent before at some points of history, some not, but most of them also belonged to the Russian Empire. Hence, the Russian Orthodox Church had an established presence in these territories, and when the country dissolved, the solution was to acknowledge their independence but to consider the Orthodox churches in most of these countries as daughter churches to the Moscow Patriarchate, and consequently to still consider these countries as parts of the canonical territory of the Russian Church. There were both exceptions and problems with this solution. First, the churches in Armenia and Georgia, countries with the history of Christianity almost 1,000 years more ancient than in Russia, were recognized as independent. There is an ecclesiastic fellowship between them and the Church of Moscow. Hence, these two countries are not a part of the canonical territory of the Russian Church. Second, some of the countries that have a Muslim majority are united under the same bishop. These are Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and some representation in Turkmenistan. Other two Muslim majority countries are significant enough to be represented by their own eparchies. These are Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan. The rest are traditionally Christian majority countries, but not all of them are willing to accept their canonical status imposed by Moscow. First, Belarus is a long ally of Russia, and generally there are no serious problems with the Belarusian Church being a daughter church to Moscow. Next, 3 Baltic states. Living for 50 years under the Soviet occupation, especially brutal during the Stalin's year, the idea of any symbolic submission to Russia, be it politics, culture, or religion, is very unpopular. And while the predominantly Roman Catholic Lithuania, with the smallest Russian population of them all, can pay less attention to this, Latvia and Estonia both have a significant population self-identifying as and speaking Russian. The respective branches of the Russian Orthodox Church are very popular among these people, oftentimes as a part of their identity. In 1996, the Constantinople Patriarchate, formerly superior to Moscow, granted autonomy to the Estonian Orthodox Church, to which the Moscow Church leadership fiercely opposed. For a little less than 3 months, the Moscow Patriarchate broke communion with Constantinople until they reached an agreement about a peaceful coexistence of two churches, which Moscow still considers temporary, and thus Estonia as her canonical territory. The Orthodox majority Republic of Moldova also has 2 major competing churches, both contesting their canonicity. The Moldovan Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate and the Bessarabian Orthodox Church of the Romanian Patriarchate share the faithful in the proportion of about 86 against 13% in favor of Moscow. The most heated struggle for the Orthodox Christian canonicity in the post-Soviet space is still unfolding in Ukraine. I have a separate video about the opposition of different Orthodox churches and their claims to canonicity. The most important takeaway would be that the leadership of the Russian Church nowadays actively uses the concept of the canonical territory to justify the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate started cutting ties to Moscow already in 2014, after the annexation of Crimea. However, the church is deeply divided between the supporters of both sides, and the leadership lacks the ability to make a final decisive move away from Moscow. For this, the church has been heavily criticized and even persecuted by the law enforcement. The formation of the Ukrainian Church of the Constantinople Patriarchate was the reason of yet another schism between Constantinople and Moscow in 2018. This church has much less faithful in the east of the country, where the majority is Russian-speaking or bilingual, and traditionally goes to the churches of the Moscow Patriarchate. The concept of the canonical territory has been, and sadly for a long time will be, an instrument of not only external relations of the Church, but also justification of the foreign policy of Russia herself. Please like the video, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. I see you all next time.